Okay, welcome everyone. This is going to be the workshop on concept inventories. We're going to talk about the misconceptions well, the title here is agile programming, but I think we're going to be specific with Smalltalk Faro. I'm Christopher Furman. I'm a professor at the university called ETS, which is part of the University of Quebec in Montreal. I teach software engineering since 2001. I did a sabbatical with Steph in his group in Lille 5 years ago, so I got to really learn a lot of Smalltalk. I was not using Smalltalk before that, so I'm sort of the Smalltalk newbie leading a workshop on finding troubles with Smalltalk. So I appreciate the community, and I feel very welcomed at ESUG, by the way. I just want to say that. Thank you. So I'll give you some background about this, why we're doing this activity today. I have, Steph and I proposed a small research project, which is basically aimed at trying to increase mobility between Quebec and France. The idea is the subject that I proposed was finding concept inventories for agile programming. And the goal of this project is to strengthen ties and to, what we'll talk about later, creating a concept inventory. And the main goal of all of this is to improve our courses. So Steph has MOOCs, his Smalltalk MOOC or Faro MOOCs. I teach some courses in TypeScript and other languages. So the idea is that we want to improve our courses with this. So I'm representing the ETS, the logo, the red logo up there, École de Technologie Supérieure. I have a colleague who couldn't come. He's working also, Roberto Lopez. He's working on models and introductory code programming courses. He has some research working on models, understanding models, UML models and things. He has worked with a professor, Julien Mercier, who is at UQAM. He's a neuroscientist, and he studies education, so he has some technology to understand like biometrics in understanding, so things that fit on your brain, measure your brain waves and things like that. I won't be talking about that today, but part of the stuff we're working on is trying to also measure comprehension, so that's his research area, so it's a collaboration. And of course, you know Stéphane Ducasse and Guichet is here also, who are representatives from France, obviously. And it's more along the lines of Faro. So let's get into what is a concept inventory, because that's the title of this workshop. It's basically, initially was proposed by physics professors, so it goes way back, probably to the 70s even. The idea was that in some physics courses, professors were realizing there were A+ students who would ace the exam, the final exam, and then they would maybe have to be a teaching assistant as a physics course, and then they find out that they actually don't understand the concepts, even though they had these wonderful A+ grades. So they came up with a standardized test for forces, movement, and energy, and you can see an example of one of the questions from this test from the force concept inventory. It's from 1992, so the graphics represent the era. I left it like that. So it's also to tell you it's not a new idea. Concept inventories have been around a long time. Essentially, you have a multiple choice question here. It's a visual question. They're saying that there's a bowling ball that drops out of the airplane that's flying, and you want to predict which path the bowling ball is going to follow. So how are you with your physics? Do you know the right answer? D. Okay, so everyone is in agreement that it's D. The interesting thing about this question is that each one of the wrong answers is something that people believed. And it's not just one person, a fluke. So the idea is that you want to come up with a concept inventory that says, I have questions that the wrong answers are actually misconceptions. They're things that people actually believe. So they would actually choose some of these answers. So I don't know if you can think about why A would be chosen, or maybe you can start with B. B is pretty obvious. People think the ball just goes right down. They don't they don't remember that the ball has a velocity going forward. C, maybe they know it goes forward, but they forget that there's acceleration of gravity, right? So you have to understand the acceleration of gravity. A, maybe, I don't know how A comes about, but I'm thinking, if you're in the airplane, you drop the ball, you would feel this wind blowing on you. So maybe they think the wind is going to blow the ball. Yeah, maybe, yeah. And then E is kind of a mystery to me, but I think I have a solution to that one. I will show you an answer. Anyway, so I'm repeating myself here with this slide, but I think I have an explanation for E. And I don't know if you saw these cartoons when you were a kid, but Bugs Bunny, the roadrunner falls off the cliff, he hangs in the air for a little bit, and then he falls down. So I'm not really sure if that explains E, but I grew up watching a lot of cartoons, so that was a thing. So if we're going to look at concept inventories for programming languages, because that's the topic, like I said, it's not a new topic, so there are some concept inventories already existing for languages like Java. And this question that's here is actually one of the questions that they use for Java to identify misconceptions in Java. And essentially, you can give this question to beginner programmers in Java and ask them to complete it. So you have this program, and then they have to complete this line. And what they do is, so when they give this to a group of students, you'll get the right answers, but then you start to get wrong answers from students. And then you try to see if there's grouping of the wrong answers. Do you have some kind of consistency? And that's going to reflect maybe a common misconception. So rather than ask you to complete the thing, I will show you, I will show you, and I didn't put the animation in, but I'm going to take away this line from the slide so I can show you what is actually there. And this was an example of a misconception. Yeah, it's okay. It's coming back. It's coming back. So I took away the thing, and now you can see the answer. This is not the right answer. This is the wrong answer. It's a wrong answer. So, and it's not just a wrong answer that's a fluke. It's statistically a common misconception. So many students, for what reason I cannot tell you, would pick this as a way to complete this program. So it's a misunderstanding. And this has been documented. It's been validated. There's some scientific validation. They repeated this with groups of students who are learning. It's published in a paper. I have the reference at the end. Anyway, the idea is we want to try to do this with Pharo, or today. That would be the idea. But it's going to be difficult to get to this point today. And I think the idea for us today is to try to come up with what are misconceptions in Pharo. So what are kind of the problems that come along? I'll say a few more words about concept inventories. The idea is once you have a concept inventory, you can use it in a course. You can give it at the beginning of the course and at the end of the course. And in theory, if you did a good job with the teaching, you can show that students have, mastered their concepts. And you can also know at the beginning of the course how many people have which misconceptions, if you know those misconceptions. So the administering of a concept inventory is at the beginning and at the end. And it's not to give grades necessarily. It's not, the purpose is to measure learning. It's not to evaluate students for grades. So, well, I sort of repeat myself what we're doing here. I'm not going to spend time on this. Our research project is set up to do 3 objectives, and we're at the beginning of it right now. So what the goal is today is to try to identify misconceptions. And so to do that, I'm suggesting, I spoke with Steph, we put together a collaborative tool on the web, and I think what I'm suggesting we can do is work as a group, and we can propose ideas or things. It's very open. The idea is it's like a Google Doc kind of thing where you can enter in whatever you want into this. I think if you have your telephones, you can get to this.
Can you share also the link on what maybe you have?
Yeah, the link is pretty long. I'll put it on WhatsApp then, maybe. Yeah. Yeah. That will take me a second. Yeah.
Yes, I can try to do that.
Yeah, maybe it's easier for you. I want to make sure also that this works because I just did it less than half an hour ago. So I hope this is the right URL. It's working? It's the PDF.
Yes, you have PDF.
Oh, I did the wrong one. Okay.
See 2020.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not the right one. I will fix that.
So are we allowed to say that I know a first misconception, this is in the name of Smalltalk.
Oh, okay. Well, Steph, you can write that in the thing. So
We have it here.
now I'm not sure why I don't see the earlier I saw maybe you guys are better with the web browser, but I didn't see the anyway. I'll put this in the WhatsApp. I don't have on the thing. So what can I do? I will maybe I can put it in the Discord to someone and then.
Or you can send it to
Send it to me on Discord, I put it on WhatsApp.
Okay.
Can you place it on Discord Guichet too, like that?
Okay. In which Discord? Discord.
What's your name on Discord? Is Guichet or? I think it's not going to find it. I have trouble with finding the.
You kind of have so many guichets in your contacts. It's forbidden. It's forbidden to have many.
Steph, I can send it to you. Is it?
Okay, please.
Okay, you're in my list, so it's easier.
And then I pass it to Guichet. We are like that. Which one?
Anyway, while you guys are sharing this, I will talk a few more words. It's not that important, but I will get it out of the way. Because we don't have a super defined structure of how we're going to do this, but I wanted to
Christophe? That? Okay. So Christophe send me the link.
okay.
Steph send me the link, so we put it on WhatsApp.
And then I put it on the Faro Discord.
Yeah, so how do we find the misconceptions? If you look up the methodology of how the other researchers have done this, it's pretty ad hoc in the beginning, right? For example, I've taught Java since 2001, and I can know some of the misconceptions just based on my experience with students. And I think this is an interesting thing because we have several people who have taught Smalltalk, maybe in the context of course, and so those people will know what are the common misconceptions, the troubles that students have when they're first learning Smalltalk. What are they? Another one might be if you learn Smalltalk recently, like I have, that I can remember some of the personal difficulties that I experienced. The third point I want to mention is with respect to what's called interference. And interference is a psychological term that talks about learning. When you learn something the first time, if you have to learn something different, it's going to cause you difficulties. And I think the analogy that I heard was if you go to the grocery store and the bread is always on aisle 1, and then all of a sudden somebody decides to move the bread to another aisle and you've been going there for 20 years, you will automatically want to go back to aisle 1 for the bread. It's just burned into your neurons. And this interference also exists with programming languages. So I suspect that probably, depending on which language you learned first, there could be some misconceptions that you carry over from that language. And in the pad that we put, I put some of the themes from what are the interference themes. What did you say, Guichet?
Visual Basic.
Oh, Visual Basic. Yeah, sure. But it could be things also, the fact that arrays start at 1, array index starts at 1 in Faro, and other languages, it's not always the same. So that, whatever you learned the first time can carry over, and that might maybe give you some misconceptions on all kinds of things. So that's a documented thing. The paper that I shared was a paper from ICSI from 2020 that's talking about interference, language interference. So I think it's pretty interesting to use those themes. And so I put those themes in the pad, so that's something we can think about. these are the themes. I just sort of copied the section of the themes from the PDF file. So the first one says old habits die hard, and you can see the index bases. The second theme is how do you switch paradigms, and this is more abstract. I'm not so sure for Pharo what that would be. The little to no mapping with previous languages. So with me, I think one of the things I remember from Pharo was extensions. When I learned about extensions, that blew my mind. I thought, well, this is a cool idea, but I've never seen that in any other language, doing extensions. Traits might also be something, or slots, for example. The word slots is kind of confusing. So these are my perspective, but I think everyone will have a different idea. For the fourth one, searching for terms and documentation is hard. That is definitely one I can identify with for the last 5 years. I think until I came to Steph's lab and I was surrounded by other small talkers, it was very difficult for me to get the information from the web. Discord wasn't in place, or if it did exist, I didn't know about it, but things go much faster once you know where to get the information. So I think that can possibly be also a source of misconceptions. I'm not sure that that's the best theme. And tooling, I think, actually I have to say that my experience with Smalltalk, with Pharo anyway, debugging was pretty natural. It seemed pretty natural to me. Even though there's always these things popping up with errors, that part was kind of freaked me out, you know. But and the stack is also huge. I find it's really hard to navigate the stack. I'm speaking frankly as a newbie, but generally I think it's not too bad. But that's, again, it's personal opinion. So those are some themes that might help you identify the, yes, there's a question, yes?
Well, a comment actually. So my switching paradigms is something I struggle with because Pharo and Smalltalk is a live object-oriented language, which is not object orientation. And the fact that the IDE is tightly interwoven into the language itself, and that it then questions, well, is a language then a textual representation of thoughts, or is it also a graphical representation of thoughts, and what does that mean? Those were things.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, yeah. Well, ideally, what you can do is type that in the collaborative tool. Type.
I don't know where the collaborative.
Okay. So yeah, let's see if I can get the QR code and we can do it that way, because I think it was posted in the WhatsApp.
Yes,
it's in WhatsApp.
Not everyone is on WhatsApp.
Okay, so maybe someone can also put it in Discord. I will try to get.
I'm just here. I'm in real life.
Yeah, of course. Okay, great. Christophe did a QR code, so I will try to display it. Thank you for helping me out. I just have to get out of.
So I put also a link in off topic in the Pharo Discord for those.
Okay, great.
In the off topic, okay, because for me I cannot publish there, so anywhere.
In off topic.
Or in, I don't know, I can in news, in whatever. But okay.
I'm just trying to get out of PowerPoint now for some reason.
So I added a misconception.
Let's do it this way, because I've cloned I've extended my screen, and I will just duplicate it. That way I won't have this trouble. Okay, so this QR code should get you into the collaborative tool. Thanks for your patience.
But you know what could, yeah, so that's cool.
Yeah, so feel free to type at the top. Maybe what you can do is maybe it's marked down, so maybe you can put a bullet point for each one of your comments that might be a misconception. Just use a dash. Has everyone got the QR? Okay, some people still taking the picture of the QR code. That's great. I was also thinking it might be more interesting to do it in small groups. I don't know what you think. Maybe we can do it in small groups and then one person in the group can capture the items. What do you think? I hear yes, so maybe, yeah. So maybe you can group yourselves geographically, without moving around too much. Yeah. Well, spatially, maybe that's the right word, spatially.
What if they're not necessarily with the 5 misconceptions?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm trying to get as much, whatever you could think, be free. I think the themes were just to give you some ideas.
And it doesn't matter where I write it? Or?
Try not to write on someone else's stuff. At the top would be good. Like I think at the top, maybe just after. Let me see if I will help.
Everybody's going to write at the top, won't you?
Let me. I will guide you a little bit with the. Okay, so I put a space for you at the top for it to write whatever ideas you want. If you feel like classifying it under a theme, that's okay too. This is not an exam, so you can do whatever you want. Okay.
They want to do something, but they can't.
Ah, la chaise ne te va pas?
Non, parce que je sais pas, j'ai un peu de douleur dans le dos. On peut parler en français parce qu'il comprend le français. Je veux bien ce qui est désolé.
Two-dimensional space would work better for this.
Sorry?
Two-dimensional space, like with Miro, works better for this.
Yeah, I didn't have access to the. That's the tool they gave me. So it's better than nothing. I'll figure out. And if you want, I think maybe we can do that for the follow-up, like after. Like we'll get the stuff from here and maybe put it in the community, and then people can continue to contribute.
Yeah, in the company we use Miro for this stuff.
Yeah.
It works really well.
Yeah, send me the link. Maybe I will. Send me the link to the tool that you use. And then
It's commercial.
yeah, but maybe you can do it in Google Docs or something, similar kind of thing.
You want a two-dimensional canvas?
No, but like there's a game, there's a Jamboard in Google. Don't you? I don't know if you've seen it. It's like you can put post-its. It's a big wide thing, so you can like infinite zoom sort of thing. How's it going here?
We're just starting to
Write the entire loop. Instead of using select, collect,
another wall, you know.
They want to write for, they want to see all the code. You get them.
If you guys have examples in code at the code level like that,
Sorry?
if you have examples at the code level, like I know, for example, chaining is a big issue for me. Like, I don't know, chaining, the message chaining. That's many times I did it wrong.
No, but we had some general ones. In other languages, the code of one class is in one place. For students, this is disturbing that it is in pieces.
And I think Steph is probably going to say something about self or super because he does a tutorial on that. So it's his test to see if you know, if you understand.
I understand. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Killer question.
yeah, yeah.
Let me see. I have some questions I ask when I do interviews. Let me find it.
I try not to.
Yes?
To write down the misconceptions we experienced in our
Anything. Either you experienced it, or even if you showed small talk to maybe you coach somebody in small talk and you see these mistakes.
misconceptions
Yes.
by other persons.
It doesn't matter. The idea is to see that they're common misconceptions. And maybe they're not common, but the idea is if we start to see patterns of the same thing, that's why doing it as a group is interesting, because then maybe you have some repetition and you can come up with and then of course we have to validate that as well. So that would be another step. So the idea is to collect just the initial stuff. So it doesn't have to be right.
Okay.
Yeah, feel free to, it's very free.
So, mind shift when switching paradigms.
And they could not explain first, okay?
Non, ben pourquoi le premier élément, il commencerait par un?
Exactly, yes.
Alors, à cause des pointeurs, mais c'est stupide because it's an implementation.
Like, no, but the two things make sense because it's the question, is, you know, why starts at 0? Because it's an offset. It's the question how much you set for initial address. But more, you
But
know,
we don't care about it.
yeah. So starting from one is more high level.
In other language, I often add, not me, but even students, they add a collection overflow, which doesn't happen much in Smalltalk because it's stop at n, you know. You don't have to stop at n-1.
Except if you use an array. You mean a positive question?
I mean, if you iterate over the size of, you go to a size of, people often run in other language because they go to n. So
I forgot that it even exists. Because indeed, if you go, the collection is just a thing in memory, but you can go farther than that.
which in C is cool.
Yes,
Because you can.
yeah, but you don't want to do that. Because then implicitly you start thinking other things outside.
It's kind of bug, really nice to something else, but it doesn't crash its application.
And there was also a problem when we talked with people, they had also a big problem with the dot.
Okay, I set a timer for 4 more minutes just so that we have some deadline. And then the idea is we can maybe look over the thing together, and so I'll let you finish.
So the dot and space is a big problem.
Est-ce qu'on pourrait pas dire le trait est une interface? S'il y a pas une
So you can think here, things that are in foreign, that are not in other languages, things that are in other languages that are not in foreign. Like this thing of coding in the device.
C'est un test de plusieurs personnes. Hein.
Pardon?
Pour le pad, est-ce qu'on a déjà testé avec autant de collaboration?
Autant peut-être pas, mais il y a pas mal.
Mhm.
C'est un truc qui marche bien.
Mhm.
I used to use it in Visual Studio.
keyboard, any.
Yeah, and I think there is certain. I'm not sure. It's not maybe not even connected to Faro, but from that point of view, you know, when you are in the world of Java, there is always this main function. In Faro, main function doesn't exist. So people are not sure where to go.
And it's even worse in JToolKit.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but and then, for example, there is also in between Python and Java. So, for example, in Java, everything is a class. There cannot be a function. But there are other languages where you can have functions and you can have classes. Like in Python and Java, so there are people who are and they don't know. They need to write a function. They start doing everything in blocks.
Yeah.
So using block as a function.
I did that. I put it as a variable a couple times.
Yes.
Which is cool, actually.
Yeah,
No,
I
but
wasn't
there
sure
is-
if it was cool, but I did it.
It can be cool, but people sometimes misuse that. Oh, there is a major thing in Coimas. It's the lazy initialization, because people don't know that they don't know how to use initialize, and to assign the initial value to a variable, they say if you assign a value, and it creates so many problems. Yes, because then
So who's writing that down?
you're
Write it because I don't know. Put it at the end. I don't know what is it.
I have also.
I will show you. It's a paradigm system. They do every variable. They do accessor. They do accessor if new. Yeah, in accessor instead of.
Okay, so the time is almost up. I gave an arbitrary amount of time. Would you like more time? 2 minutes. Okay?
Basic new some discussion. So when you initialize an object and you have value instances or one word, like that.
Doesn't want to start.
Yes, you know, I saw people using dictionaries as object for no reason.
So we should provide something like
Yes,
convert to a class to system dictionary to a dictionary. You mean it's a bit like
Moi, c'était
sometimes.
vraiment comme des classes, tu vois. Ça veut dire qu'il y avait des blocs dedans.
Ah d'accord.
Je sais pas. Il y a des gens qui sont pas bien.
C'est un peu comme une base de données ou non, vraiment comme une classe. Parce que des fois, il y a une norme égale ça, prénom, c'est comme quand tu récupères une.
Non, non, c'était vraiment nom égal un bloc.
Comment gérer ça avec les prototypes?
Ah oui, d'accord, ok.
Voilà. Sans raison, c'était un peu plus simple. Quand t'as pas de prototype, tu n'utilises pas de prototype.
There,
Le do it, même maintenant ça existe plus, mais le débugger, le do it, des fois il est un peu.
there is maybe.
No, when you execute some code and you get the debugger, I wasn't able to code in the debugger because it was a do it,
Okay, yes.
but it's not.
There is a problem with because I noticed many people have this problem. You open the playground and you can access your command D, command P, command K, command I. Then you can press the thing on top. You can select and press the thing on top, and all these combinations you can find it. Printing, the executing.
But it's the same in Python.
Yeah, but it's just in the inspector. This is like the conceptual difference. People have they don't know. Speak English like that. What is this?
Okay, so that's the time. Please feel free to keep writing. I think I would like to, I suggest what we can do is look at the issues together. I don't know. And maybe I can also try to get some clarification because some of the things I was reading, I wasn't exactly sure what it means. We'll just start at the beginning, if that's okay with you. Maybe I can, we can look at not the markdown one, but the, not sure how to make this full screen. Maybe I click on that. Okay. We can zoom. Okay, so Maybe I can also ask you if you don't mind to put your name for your section, because that could be useful for me to follow up if I want to ask for some clarification. You don't have to put your name if you don't want to, but it could be useful. The first part is, let's see, there is no code. I cannot find the code. So it's Bernhard, who is? Yes? Oh, your group. So can you explain what that means?
We had an interesting discussion because Michael was saying he could not find the code, and on the other hand, my impression when learning Smalltalk was there is so much code, so many classes, so many methods. I don't know on what to focus on the first.
Okay. Whose perspective was the couldn't find the code? You said Michael? Oh, yes.
Yeah, so my first impression when I was in small talk, I saw it on the computer. There was no one showing me because it was of my father. It's code, and I looked at it, and I'm looking where I have to put the code. Where is the code? Where is the area where I type in my
Okay.
program? Because I was used to write a text file and then compile it, or as in BASIC to run it.
So that's like interference from your previous experience. Okay. So just where do you put in the code is really the question. Okay. Yeah. I think that's going to be a common misconception. Where to start? How about that?
There's no main.
There's no main. Yeah.
Yes, you have the tools, you have the classes, but you don't know how to start the program.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm thinking my experience was I learned in Playground, so that's maybe part of, I don't know. I'm curious about when did was Playground always there in Smalltalk from the beginning? No? Okay. Yeah, but there was a place to experiment and you could try your code. So yeah, no, that's my own personal question, but the next one is, on the other hand, there is so much code, what to explore first. So I get that. I also was very intimidated, especially when you press Shift Enter, you start to type some stuff and there's all these matches and you're saying, wow, this is all these messages. So that can be intimidating. Why do they start counting at 1 instead of 0? I think we discussed this one. This is, I think, pretty common, not just with Pharo, it's with other languages as well. Big thing was the execution order when doing math expressions in Smalltalk. Okay, I agree with that one too. I was somewhat perplexed by that, especially if you learned maybe classical computer science, MDAS. I remember the order of operations and the priorities. There are some gotchas with the syntax in Smalltalk, so that one I think is good. Did you have anything to add if I missed something? That's okay.
Well, next to that one, so the students have a really hard moment learning keyword messages. Where do they start, and how do I make a keyword message and send as argument something that is also the result of another keyword message? And how doesn't it get confused? Well, they don't understand.
Oh, because of the way messages work and yeah, it's true. It's true. I remember that also. Yeah.
I don't know if you read if you watch the exorcism.
Oh, the video. Right.
Video presentation of
Yeah.
Pharo by the guy, and this is really nice because this is a misconception. He said, "Oh, it's okay." He said, "Yes, Pharo does not have a method. It has message." And I think that people think that because we said message, this is not a method invocation, and that was super fun. So it was like, oh wow. So for us, we could rewatch that because maybe there are some.
Yeah, you can pull some. Yeah, so if someone can write down exorcism video. It's sort of a critique. They're also talking about positive aspects of Pharaoh as well, but
No, it was positive, huh?
yeah, no, I saw it briefly. It came up on one of my social media things, and I watched it. If it's the same thing you're talking about. What?
The message sending is subtly different, right?
Sorry?
Message sending is subtly different, right? That's why
Yeah.
we call it message sending.
Yeah, and also I think because a message is separate from a method, right? Well, I mean, in the sense that the way you're actually sending a message, coming from Java, I know that when I compiled my program, if it compiles, I assume that this method is really going to one place, except for maybe some polymorphism if I'm using an abstract class.
Dynamic lookup.
Yeah, the dynamic lookup, yeah.
The dynamic lookup in Java, if you have a private method, it's directly referenced after
Yeah.
compile time, so it's statically bound.
Yeah.
While if you have other methods, they are dynamically looked up.
Mm.
They don't make the distinction, and when you talk about applying a method,
Right.
it's basically you call this specific
That's right.
one, and they don't make the distinction. While
Yeah.
messaging makes the separation between.
That's it.
Well, even if you have dynamic lookup in other languages, is there any other language that allows you to override that doesn't understand message? Because I think that really is the key to what messages are. When I send a message to you in real life, you don't understand it. You come back to me, you say I don't understand,
Hmm.
and overriding that. But that's still actually what the difference between calling versus message sending is. Like really understand what the difference
Yeah.
is. Still actually a source of confusion.
I agree. I agree with you. That speaks to me with my limited experience. So, yeah.
A related question is distinction between functions and methods.
Okay. Yeah, this came up.
Students always confuse.
I think this one came up here as well. We were talking about that.
So yes, because this is a question I ask in interviews with the developers that are supposed to do OO, and they don't think about the self as a hidden parameter. I mean, they don't. Especially you have languages like JavaScript or Python. So it's function.
Hmm.
They use the same name.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So
But
they
a
don't say-
function is not a method, it's not the same?
No.
No, you have the self, which is the input parameter with a method.
Ah, you mean in that sense?
Yes.
In the sense that function in Python, they are global methods. Okay.
But
No, for me, a misconception, this is result or getting the result and doing something. You know, print, if you just look at a concrete case, what is the difference between print it and do it? And yeah, you can do something and do not care of the result, or you can do something and care of the result.
In Python, when they use print or return, it's a difficulty for students when they learn that stuff.
Okay.
Prefer.
The point about navigating the IDE, that's pretty global problem. I'm not sure if there's more concrete. If you can be more concrete about the points. I agree, navigating the IDE is an issue. I don't know if you can be more specific about the pain points.
I think the IDE thing is interesting though, in the sense that I feel there's also a lot of tacit knowledge there, as in it's more about playing the guitar rather than knowing conceptually what concepts are. So I wonder to what extent, I'm just wondering to what extent tacit knowledge actually maps to one of the 5 categories.
Yeah, the categories aren't really that important.
I know.
Yeah, I wanted to do it as just a common theme for other things, but I'm more interested in getting the stuff. Dave, you had something to say.
I was going to say, I didn't do a section and do all my stuff. I kind of tried to put it in the various places where.
Okay, great.
So I had a bunch of comments on navigating the IDE a bit further down.
Okay, yeah, let's try to move a little faster. When coming from procedural, how to design OO. Okay, so this is an interesting misconception. It's come up in the other languages. For example, the Java concept inventories. The OO things come up quite often. So the difficulty between procedural and OO. So you're shaking your hand. So
I think one of the problems you have here is like modeling your problem.
right.
And coming from Java, you probably model mostly the same. I think it's more if you come from a language that doesn't actually have something like object, maybe Pascal.
Yeah.
That's
You know, I learned TRS-80 basic when I was a kid, right? That was my first language. So if you want to talk about biases.
yeah, not the modern Pascal.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, yeah, no, but when I went to Pascal, it was like, oh, there's functions. Like I can call a function, I can name things, right? So that was great. So I'm curious about when they say procedural. What do you mean by procedural here in this comment?
Functional languages, imperative programming languages. Not functional programming languages, imperative programming languages.
Mm.
With no options.
Okay.
C or the old Pascal version.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. The last point here is meta classes, which I'm going to play devil's advocate and say which people are doing beginning Pharo. Are they doing meta classes? But I agree with the point, but I don't know if it's will there be a lot of
When first confronted with the IDE, you don't know how to navigate it, and then you get confused about the instance versus class side.
okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, the class side is the button to switch.
Right. That is true. I actually didn't. I think it was months before I even knew what the class side was because I never clicked on that button, and so I was missing a lot of stuff. So yeah, Dave.
Fundamental confusion among a lot of people, particularly coming from Java, about what classes are. Because in Java, they're static objects, they're not inherited. So the whole idea that classes are inheritable, I mean, it under the covers is about meta classes, but that idea that
Okay.
that classes are just objects and they're inherited just the same as
That yeah. And now I understand what you mean by meta classes. Perfect. Yes.
Actually, when you hear that class are object, that object are
Yeah. It's
kind of operated. That's why meta classes. But
yeah. Yeah.
Also with meta classes, I want to say some people getting into Pharo, they're already experienced. Actually, meta classes was one of the reasons why I got to Pharo. It was either Lisp or Pharo.
Okay.
It became Pharo, but like the whole meta programming thing in general. So yeah, I was really happy when in the MOOC meta classes were.
Okay. But that's not early on in the MOOC, right? That's later in the MOOC, if I'm not mistaken.
You watch it at 2 times speed and
So you go for the what is it from the matrix where they plug it in your brain and you know kung fu basically is what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, if you've already done a couple of programming languages, you just are like, okay, what's the if, what's control flow? You just, you know, you don't need to.
Yeah.
It's more like how does previous knowledge map to Pharo and where are misconceptions, so you can speed run the book.
Yeah,
Because
I agree.
you're not wrapping your head around it anymore, except with meta classes.
I think Dave has another comment.
I was just going to say, I think that is actually a misconception, is that you learn small talk by mapping, okay, how do I do this, how do I do loops, and so on. I think that's kind of completely backwards. And I think that that's very, very common approach to doing it, but and perhaps that's where people do find it challenging, is that that's what they're trying to do. They're not trying to say, okay, and what I try to do is get students to forget about other languages, just focus on what is this actually doing. And I mean, I haven't taught Smalltalk as a first year programming language, but I've taught Scheme as a first year programming language. And the good thing about it was all the kids who thought they knew how to program coming in suddenly said, oh, I actually don't know what's going on here. And then they sort of set that aside and then they could learn. And I think the same is true for a lot of people for Smalltalk too. I mean, comment I made further down is that people don't actually understand OO when it comes to Smalltalk. They think they do, especially if they came from Java. They think, oh, I know all about OO.
Yeah.
You know.
Welcome to Delphi with the better syntax now. For the first year.
I agree with it's very humbling about what we think we know. So it challenges what our ideas about, especially OO. So.
Yes, on OO, we have some points at the end.
Okay. We're down to Melvin's corner. So where is Melvin's corner? Here? Yes? Okay. So I remember with DNS lookup, I simply didn't believe that iterative and DNS lookup was true, simply thought it was just worked even after it was explained to me. So this is, I suppose that's a specific use case, right?
Yeah, and also I remember in computer science, as a computer science student, so and I've also seen it with beginner programmers when I was teaching Python. Like, you explain them, this is how it works, and they just don't believe you. And I've had that same experience myself when Maarten van Steen, the distributed systems researcher, explained the full process of how DNS lookup works. And I'm just thinking like, nah, you just type in facebook.com and you get Facebook. After he explained it.
Okay.
And I think in that sense, what I'm trying to point out there is that there's a lot of lazy style type of thinking going on where there's some emotional refusal to literally go step by step.
Is it because of the details? They're overwhelming, or what do you think is?
I think it's partially because of the details, but I also think it's because it's most of these things are explained from the abstract layer and not to the concrete layer. Like, and if I would have been able to see
I see.
the actual values being sent to
I understand, yeah.
why and how it works, then I would have been able to believe it. But because it's too abstract, I don't know how to conceptualize it.
I understand, yeah.
And then lazy thinking cannot.
Okay. Consumer-based thinking. Many students, when learning programming, think there are certain tools provided them, but they don't exist.
Yeah, it can even be as simple as you have a text editor or any editor, and you just think it is automatically saved, and you have to do that, and then there's a lot of frustration. Oh, why I have to do this? Oh, why don't I have back in the day syntax highlighting? But there are many ways. Oh, shouldn't the database provide me this particular feature?
Okay.
You have to build that.
Right. I will say I had a little bit of that too, when I was learning. Yeah.
On that point, as long as you don't notice afterwards that you don't need the thing you need to do, or you think you're needing at that point, it's actually indication of a defect in your ecosystem. Like when people tell you, hey, I really would like to have this tool and it doesn't exist in Smalltalk, and you can't really explain to them, well, you don't need it because X, Y, Z, then that's on you. You should provide that tool because it's probably useful.
Well, yes and no. Like, it depends on how quick it's built. Like, look at the developer tools for Google Chrome, right? Like, obviously, they are handy when you're programming HTML, JavaScript, but they took a long time to make. So like, there's this trade-off of like, okay, who else other than Firefox and Chrome has created developer tools for the browsers? Like, very few vendors. It just takes a long time to create all the tools necessary in order to be that interactive. So it's a mix.
But you want people to use Smalltalk, and they tell you it's hard to use because it lacks tools. Well,
yeah, I think, I'm sure Steph has something to say about it.
So wait. So you know what we are interested in is that this is important because I was looking a bit at the list of things. For me, I'm really interested into the misconceptions. Not, oh, this language does not have this and this and this and this and this, or those kinds of things. Like,
the thing is, this is a misconception only if you don't actually need the thing you're looking for. Otherwise, it's a conception. Like, you notice that something's missing, and it's missing.
Well, but it's also things like you do variable assignment and you assume the whole object is copied. And things like that. And it's like, oh, but why can't I have that? It's like, well, because references save a lot on memory. It's like, oh.
Yeah. So maybe I can get back to what I see the misconception definition is from teaching perspective. So the idea is we want to, as teachers or instructors, we want to be able to correct correct the conception in the brain that is causing trouble to do something. Like the first case where the instruction was wrong, the variable assignment was wrong. Or it can also be the zero-based or the one-based or the method chaining. Those are things that we know that we have to emphasize in our teaching to overcome those things.
The aliasing. You just mentioned the aliasing with the copy or not copy. That's a misconception, which is that, oh, I don't know that because I modified this variable, I modified this one.
Quality versus identity comparison.
Yeah.
Did someone document the aliasing?
I'm writing something.
Okay.
Yeah, I think magical thinking, I already explained it.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to consumer-based thinking.
Yeah. Information overload, I think, goes back with so much code, right? It was mentioned. I'm not sure if that's what.
It depends on how Smalltalk is taught. I've not been formally taught Smalltalk in a university
Yeah.
setting, but in Java there
Yeah.
was also a really annoying thing.
I agree with that.
When you had so when you had that they were like, oh, string args will tell you that 12 weeks from now.
Yeah. Just memorize this, and
What's that?
just memorize this. This is how you call your main function, right?
And that causes misconceptions.
Yeah.
Because now you're suddenly programming from memory. And then it's like, oh, but this is how I remembered how to do it.
Yeah, some more comments?
I think when you say that you're not sure that this is a thing with Smalltalk, I think it kind of is because with Smalltalk you're forced into an IDE.
Right.
And that is not a thing with other programming languages. With other programming languages, you need to learn the concept of how to write your programming, but you don't need to learn a new text editor. And running a compiler is something you probably can do too. It's like command line invocation. It's not that hard.
No.
Yeah.
No, I did the experience. So let's be clear. I tried to configure Eclipse alone.
I'm not talking about Eclipse. I had experience with teaching first semester students. We started out with giving them Java C on the command line and giving them a text editor. Eclipse was like third or fourth lesson, right? That's really, I understand what you mean, and that's why I explicitly mentioned IDE.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, if you force Java students to learn Java into learning Eclipse at the same time, you get far more work for them to do, and I think you kind of have the same problem with Smalltalk because you force people into learning an IDE because, well, that's the Smalltalk environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's not a big problem, but maybe it is.
But that's not a misconception.
It's not a misconception, but it is an actual problem when teaching.
Yeah.
It happens at the
But I think Steph, if
now they decided not to use Smalltalk anymore for teaching object-oriented programming because they say that the students came from the first year knowing some Java, and when they are forced to, when they need to use the environment in Smalltalk, they spend a long time learning the environment and kind of fixing these misconceptions and kind of understanding until they can start actually learning objects.
But you see, I will tell you something else. Because this is just a state of mind, this is just that somebody wanted to get rid of it. At Novi Sad, there is a group that said, oh, when I was surprised, they said, oh, we are teaching Java, and then we are teaching Faro because this is really different. So if you want to educate your students so that they know how to drink Coca-Cola and you only give them Coca-Cola, they will drink Coca-Cola. And that's like that.
Mm-hmm.
So now this means that the goal of the lecture is you know how to drink Coca-Cola. Period. So you see, last year we did a lecture and we didn't even teach Faro. We said, oh, let's start with test, and oh, by the way, for next week you should know Faro, and you will have to explain to us in 3 weeks how did you learn. There are all the resources on internet we don't even want to know. Don't explain to us. You will be graded on what are the things that you put in place to learn. Our approach, this is, okay, how can you learn a language fast?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pedagogical approach, you know. And then after, if you want to kill a dog, you always find a way to kill your dog. Eh? There's no problem. Huh? So no, but this is true. So that's why, yeah, you know, put me there, and then you will see. Huh? They will all do Faro. Huh?
I
So,
do it when I quit.
yeah, exactly. You know.
So I think I can abstract this to a point that doing small talk requires skills in the IDE. I don't think you can separate them. And I think that's the point that you're trying to make, right? So
oh, you can. So everybody in the room can code in Faro with a text editor and call Faro from the command line.
Right,
you know?
right.
Faro.image /eval / blah. It is nearly the same as
and it's fast too. It's fast.
So it is just that this is like cut my fingers,
Yeah.
type with your keyboard. You can also learn how to type with a keyboard with gloves.
Okay, so Stefan, it's your section.
Oh, this is such a stupid system. There are multiple ways of doing things. Why is that?
So how?
And I provided a part of an answer. Yes.
Okay.
It's the result of it being a live system. So in order to evolve it, we make a new version of what we already have. So at the same time, there will always be one part that does not work because it's new, one part that works, and perhaps even still an old part that used to work.
Okay, I think there's a lot to chew on with that.
It makes it difficult to find out what you are supposed to be using, because if you wait 2 months, then the new stuff will be better and old stuff might be broken.
Yeah. But it reminds me of an anecdote from one of my students. When I was first teaching Java, I would put the JDK API webpage with all of the classes and the packages. And I remember a student coming to me during the break, and he said, I think I cannot take this class because there's no way I can learn all of these classes by the end of the semester, right? He was freaked out by the API or the classes, and I think maybe this is part of Smalltalk as well. It gets back to.
That's a good misconception. You don't have. But wait, because we are all laughing like that. I work on a language. What was called the name? I don't remember, but. I think that this was 100, when they gave me the documentation of the language, I said, okay, what is the construct of the language? It was 100 pages. Because all the library were constructed in the language.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh wow, I didn't know that could exist. It was just like that. It was, okay, this is all the constructor if you want. So this is the difference between libraries
and the language, I would say. Yeah.
A bit further is the thing with in Java and Delphi, I was used to always having to check for nil every day.
Okay.
And I now notice that I design things nil-free, or still working with nils.
Okay. So the way nil or it's not undefined in Pharo. I'm mixing up my languages, but
first level
right,
learning, but
right,
later,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. It's certain
things which have fantasy names is difficult.
I see. So the artistic, creative side of Pharo, it can be a barrier. So
you don't like Calypso and Nautilus?
Yes.
I found it always charming, but yeah.
It is charming, but
Yeah.
it is better.
Okay, good. Those are some good points. We have some other points, and I think Dave said that he wrote a lot of his comments in the. So I'll just put these up. If it's your comment, you can maybe explain it. Well, writing long methods, I think that's I understand it. I also was writing long methods. Is it? Do you find that? The solution to that is to explain to people how to refactor, or do you just say don't write long methods, think better? I mean, what's the, in some of these misconceptions, I'm curious about what the way to maybe what's the missing piece to counter the misconception. So.
Read Pharo with style.
Oh, read Pharo style. Okay.
Or disable resizing your browser.
So what I see from students is that they don't write long methods because of style. It's because they want to see the entire thing and have control.
Yeah. They want to understand the big picture.
For them to understand that, well, sometimes you have to lose control. You
Yeah.
cannot know everything and have everything in one page.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's just a beginner design. Maybe. Yeah. I'm not sure it's really a misconception, but it's a good point. It's a good point. Create a method without tests because there is no time. Yes. The famous, infamous test-driven. That's I think all paradigms have this problem, right? Or at least getting tests. Using snake case with camel case system. I'm curious about that one. Who wrote it? Can you speak about it? No?
It's just a style thing.
Oh.
It's not possible to use snake case in some case, no?
I have no idea of it.
If you don't understand, you kill the sentence.
Yeah, okay.
Plenty of them.
Putting semicolons everywhere, yes, okay, that that one also, it's still, if I haven't done Pharo for a while, it's really weird. I want to put the semicolon and not the period. It's just coming from the languages that I've used in the past. So
Also it's fun because the semicolon is the cascade. So actually
yeah, it really can work and really mess you up. Yeah, so.
So this is what this is. Terminator is not a separator.
Yeah. Difficult to give in to sending messages, dynamic dispatch, yes. I think that gets back to the object-oriented misconceptions, if I'm not mistaken there. I'm not sure who wrote this one. If you want to speak.
that came up in a discussion.
Okay. Write loops by hand. What does that mean? I'm going to guess it means people want to write loops instead of using collections.
Yes.
Yeah. That was me. That was me 3 years ago. So.
But it's kind of okay. You can abstract it in not being how do you say idiomatic.
Okay, Dave.
Just to go back to the previous one, dynamic dispatch is really critical, but there are whole groups of people that think that inheritance is a really evil thing.
Of course, yeah.
In terms of object-oriented design. And so I personally think it's the natural way to do things, but there is that tension that we need to identify.
Okay, so how would you phrase that? The fact that
I think actually people that don't like it don't really understand polymorphism well.
Okay. A long time ago, I had a student say to me, "Oh, there's two kinds of polymorphism. There's the Java polymorphism. Then there's the idea that you can send any message to an object, and that kind of polymorphism, more like JavaScript polymorphism. This is before JavaScript actually. So, and I realized I had only learned the inheritance polymorphism because that's what I knew from my paradigm in OO. So maybe that's the crux of this: is that there's the message dispatch.
The people that dislike it think that it binds, it creates too many binding between different levels. And
also, if you got your hierarchy wrong, then it's hard to fix it. I think that's another argument against that. But I think we're getting off the misconception thing. So, so maybe the messaging thing is more about the dynamic dispatch. Write loops by hand, no break statement. Guichet?
Yes, because people want to break. So we have this question in Discord many times.
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
People want to go out of loops.
Yeah. How do I terminate my collect or whatever, that kind of thing or something?
Yes, and this was in the region of what is the thing here? Old habits.
Okay. Yeah. I forgot we were talking about old habits die hard. That is the theme here. So people want files. That one I get. People do not want files. That one maybe you can explain. Who put people do not want files? That's less obvious to me. Maybe it was Steph. Accessing collections on zero-based indexes, okay. I'm not sure of the subtlety of this one. Accessing collections on zero-based indices. Yeah, can someone explain that to me? Because I'm not sure I get it. Yeah?
Probably you just have to get used to not starting at 0, but starting at 1.
Okay, all right. First, the first thing, yeah. There is no zeroth. So accessing array elements a la C. So subscript syntax plus index. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Not using version control. That's, I found that was more related to the complexity of the power of the IDE, because it's very powerful with your changes, the history of your changes, and also with Iceberg. When I finally learned Iceberg, I felt like, okay, I can do stuff. But I was totally avoiding version control. I was saving stuff in versions of images. That was something I was really doing badly. He's wincing up there, so he can say. But yeah. So code does not get saved automatically. You should save the image. Yeah, that's another one. Iceberg, I saw, actually has the checkbox. When you commit, it will save the image and save your code. That's one.
You should commit for that.
Yeah, you should commit first. All right, mind shifts when switching paradigms. Go away from file editing. First time in Smalltalk IDE, I was lost in a lot of tools and do not know where to start, especially without a single entry point, the main. Okay. That's related to, I think, the file comment from before. The idea of changing system classes is very foreign. Can someone speak about that?
I had a student once who was really forceful to me saying, because I would add something to small integer, or I would implement it to other system class. And they said, no, you can't do that. And I said, no, your image is the program.
Right.
The fact that there are pre-built classes that you can add to it is just a convenience. And they just didn't get that.
Yeah.
To them, you were doing something evil if you were modifying system class.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I think that ties back to the extensions thing, because when I learned you can modify the things with extensions, then I felt much more comfortable with those kind of changes.
Extensions is related to the packages.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, when you're using it.
Right. But I was similar to the point that I didn't want to touch these systems, but then when I realized, oh, my code is actually in a different package, so that somehow that was okay. It was better. I felt less intimidated by that.
Maybe the idea that with all the freedom that you get in Smalltalk, there is also a danger. No?
Yeah, for sure.
Put a breakpoint in collection add, and then your image goes away, or
Yeah.
object become nil.
Yeah. Okay, seeing the entire system is scary. I totally get that one. But also, it's also great. When I saw Boolean's implementation, then I was like, oh wow, this is great. I felt like, what? And plus it's very OO, so that's the good side of it, right? But yeah. Plus, if you come from Java, I remember when, I think it was IntelliJ gave you access to the source, and there's that big warning message about, like, this is not, you don't have the rights to use this code, you know. Whereas in Smalltalk, it's like, oh, it's just there. It's great. Blocks stealing context, nobody understands this. So I'm going to guess that's related to when you see the stack with so much stuff on the stack. When you're debugging, you're trying to figure out where is all this stuff coming from. But
No, so I would put that with seeing the entire system. So the debugger also gives you a full view of
yeah.
the But what I meant there is that when you are using a closure, it's not the same thing as using an anonymous function in JavaScript, for example.
Okay.
And they have different semantics, and people don't understand those semantics.
Okay.
Things happen.
Can you add those details to that point? Because return with blocks is not intuitive, especially when blocks are used as lambdas. Okay, that I can get that now from what you just described. In other languages, the code of one class is in one place. Understand the browser to start coding. Who? Anything to add to that one?
Which one?
In other languages, the code of one class is in one place.
Oh yes, the idea is that when you start to code with another language, you start with a text editor, and usually you have the code of one class inside one file,
Mm-hmm.
like in Java. And like students, usually this is better for them because they can see everything, and then they try to mimic that when they start small code, and it does not fit.
Oh,
You
okay.
need to understand the browser before, you need to understand
Ah.
the organization of the system,
Yeah.
to say, okay, this is a class, and then I can not see all the code of all methods of this class, I need to click and extend.
Yeah.
Especially when you enter the class side and the instance side.
Okay. Yeah. That I can't. When I saw the stone files on GitHub or whatever then I said, okay, it actually is in a file. It can be in a file, but it's actually that's just to map it to that paradigm, right? But it's actually each thing is a separate thing. So yeah, I agree with that. It's hard to when you're used to looking at it all in one file, you can't do that easily. Okay. But again, I think it gets back to the point is that really what you need to do? Is what you expect to do? So yeah, it's a misconception based on the environment, the language. And this is under mind shifts, so I think that's right. I appreciate that all of these things were classified. Let's see, reading source is not enough for understanding, need to run example or test to have enough context for development.
That was for me. For context, I did Java development for a long time. I consider myself somewhat experienced, and I started Smalltalk 1.5 years ago. And I have a huge application, legacy, and you can't read it and understand it. It's nested, several hundred classes deep.
Okay.
You can't just look at the code and understand.
I understand,
you
yeah.
have to test it. And
the way you learn is by sort of inspecting and observing, right?
right.
Yeah.
You run your test cases, you put some breakpoints where you suspect
Mm-hmm.
things happen, and then you look at the stuff that passes by your
Yeah.
breakpoints, and then you can try to modify.
Okay.
But you can't read the code and
I get it, yeah.
determine what you need to do because you don't know what values pass by.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that's a paradigm shift.
Yeah, I agree with you. Try to go a little faster. We're at 20 minutes after 3. Not having the notion of text file to be compiled and the compiled outcome if it is all that you know. So anyone can speak with that one? I guess it's the way I understand it is that it's sort of related to the fact that it's not actually in, a method is an object. It's not necessarily there's the code representation, but once it's compiled, it's an object. Is that kind of what we're talking about here? Maybe it's related to the fact that it's not all in one file kind of thing. Equality versus affectation. I'm assuming that's the operator. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, students try
Yeah.
to do an assignment with an equals.
Yeah.
And also since equals and you have equals and equals, so you will write it down.
Okay, yeah.
Between identity and...
Great. How to use loops, for sure, that's big change. Difference between a small talk block versus a group of sentences wrapped in braces. So then you would talk about the block being the square brackets, basically. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Lack of public API. So it's just everything is public. Is that what you mean? Or there's no?
I want that as very often there is no clear public API like you could find in another language because they are protected.
Okay. Okay. All right. So definitely a paradigm shift. No arithmetic precedence that came up already before. Student, I sent the dot image, me, but I also need the dot changes. Okay, I have done this as a professor. So, yeah, that's the part of the learning experience. So that's a great point. Nil has behavior and you can even extend it. Yeah, that's, I think it's related to what you said, Stefan, about the non-nil stuff. Keyword syntax is super difficult to get. Okay, that's a source of difficulties for students. Self super meaning, I think probably Steph has lots to say about that because that's one of his tutorials. Structs versus objects. That one you're going to lose me a little bit because I'm not that familiar with structs in Pharo or Smalltalk.
There are no structs. It's
Oh.
for people coming from C.
I see. Well, that's why I'm not familiar with it. Okay. Navigation, senders, implementers, debug. Why is that a misconception? Because I found that really cool, actually. And I had been doing that in...
It's not a misconception, but it took me time to... First I was reading code, the classic way. Then I learned how to use senders and implementers. But it took me a long
Yeah.
like debugging and like he said about the breakpoint.
Okay, great. I see. It's interesting because I was using it in JetBrains with JetBrains for Java, and then when I saw that they were also in Pharo, I was like, oh, this is cool, right? It didn't see, but I can see like if I hadn't seen that before, it's one of these things about what you saw first, which language you saw it in first. It's great. Little to no mapping with previous languages, slots, traits, method extensions, we mentioned all of those. Don't really understand OO, even if they came from Java or C++, we got that. Everything is an object versus Java where numbers, etc. are not. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Live image, powerful IDE, recovering from crash, change finder. Yeah, I've felt this pain. It's another reason Iceberg was a lifesaver because even if that happens, the pain is, a lot of times you just say, I didn't lose that much or whatever to get back from a thing. But these are definitely some barriers. Instance versus class side, we mentioned it. Class vars versus instant class vars also. Pool dictionaries, this one I do not know, honestly. So I'm assuming who wrote pool dictionaries? Okay.
The pool dictionaries basically allow you to import the class variables from one class to another class.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
People do static variables, constants,
Okay.
stuff like that with enums.
Okay.
And people can work for 15 years in Smalltalk without using it.
Yeah.
And how to model data, also simple data object, structs.
Classes as objects, inheritance works properly, okay. Coding in the debugger, yeah, this is one thing, but I'm not so sure that's a misconception. That's kind of like, how do you, like doing that is really cool, but it's not what you would expect. I think that's the thing. You would, and especially the contribution Dave made yesterday, that's even sort of nicer with this writing test. So it's similar line. So they're good points because these are fundamental concepts, even if maybe they aren't necessarily.
Nobody knows how to do TDD if they haven't done it in Smalltalk. In debugger.
Yeah.
It's really different.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of us that essentially program in debugger. And I was talking to Stephen actually earlier.
Yeah.
Some features that need to be in the debugger to make that even more seamless.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Those are good points. IDE is mandatory, more or less. Yeah, this came up before in the other topics. People are afraid of not having types. They use defensive programming. Okay. How does that affect new students or?
Afraid is the wrong word for me. I hurt. I waste a lot of time because I can't properly navigate the program I have. And types would really help me with that. So my comment on this, and I know I'm probably a little bit alone or in the minority, but people are right to be afraid of not having types.
Okay.
That it can really hurt you.
Okay. as I said, the idea of getting these ideas is that we will maybe try to come up with ways to validate these. In other words, if we can make concrete examples of where, like the question that I showed earlier, where you have a question, you have to complete something. If you can get some kind of feedback from early students to try to validate this, that's the next step. We're not doing it today, but this is the next step in the project. Indentation sensitivity. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Common question about your comment, which is so types versus no types, whatever. That's a discussion. But what I find interesting is like every language obviously has a culture. In Java, like every array needs to be the same type. Like I remember making an array of objects, so I could secretly put a string in that wrapped object and a number in another one. And then the teaching assistant being like, no, an array should be all of one type, and you can't just hack around that. But in Pharo, that's kind of in certain cases really encouraged. So in that sense, I find it really tough to actually know, specifically in Pharo, like when is
I see what you're saying.
Kind of like a misconception, because like a part of me sometimes is like, oh, I'm gonna do it the Java way, so I'm gonna not necessarily ensure, but this particular orders collection is going to have one type. And sometimes I'm more in my JavaScript mindset where everything is just mixed.
Just an object, yeah.
But I don't actually know what the best practice is on it. So if I would happen to teach, I don't think I would in the near future, but if I would happen to teach her, I wouldn't even know what like the right conception is.
Right. So I think if I understand it, people would be holding themselves back from what they could do depending on their language, or not, depending on their language, their first language. Like if they attack it from the Java mindset, then they're always going to use the same type, as opposed to maybe coming from JavaScript, you would be more open to whatever object is there.
But also the question actually, what is the Smalltalk mindset here? Because I haven't fully encountered it actually. Like no one explicitly told me if I'm allowed to have a string and a number in the same ordered collection.
Steph's not here. The Pharo with style might say something about that, so I don't know. But yeah, again, that's also a culture. So yeah, good. They're good points. Indentation sensitivity. Again, I imagine that's a formatting thing. And I'm not sure if anyone has anything to say about that one.
The thing is, when you come from Python.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you have nightmares about indentation.
So the fact that you don't have sensitivity to the spaces has an effect.
Okay, that's good. Maybe if you can add on the part about Python, so that's good. Methods as control structure. Okay, this is interesting. What's the story behind that?
Wasn't me, but I get it.
Okay, explain it to me like I'm 5.
If true or false is control structure in other languages, it's not. It's just a method.
Okay.
So all of the control structures are just methods.
Okay.
Except that's special, right?
No.
Now, if true or false is special, isn't it?
No, the compiler optimizes it, but that's irrelevant. Semantically, it's just that. But the issue with that is that
I think in the Smalltalk standard, you're not supposed. It says you're not supposed to override it, so it really is special.
no, you can't override it.
No, you. Smalltalk 80 standard says it, you're not allowed to.
You can override it.
I mean,
In modern Smalltalks, you can override it. And it's useful sometimes.
Okay, so I want to move on because we have also more things to cover. We're almost at the end. Finding stuff, learning. Okay, so we're actually in the theme on searching for terms and documentation is hard. That theme came out in learning new languages. So the first thing is finding stuff, learning Command N, Command M, and the finder. So I agree with this one. I even find myself going back to Control Enter to just start there. And even though that may not be the best way, depending on what you want to do, maybe it's better to browse the class that you're looking for. And so yeah, I agree that there's something there, but I'm not sure what the right way is. But it is definitely a source of confusion. no HTML doc of the standard classes. So again, that's probably a bias if you're coming from Java with Java doc. So that one I get. Stack Overflow, and I suppose that means there's not a lot of questions about Pharo relative to other environments. Is that what Stack Overflow means?
Yes.
Okay, so yes. When I was with Steph's group, I was actually saying we should just ask more questions on Stack Overflow because maybe it will get some stuff going. Sometimes I ask questions, I answered my own question just to put it there and see if it changed anything. But anyway.
You use Stack Overflow because it's dominated by people who don't understand the concepts in Smalltalk.
Yeah, I see that, but I also thought it's also the first place Google sends you when you ask a question. Like and literally it will send you there in minutes after you post a question. I was surprised by that. And so I thought this could be a good way to build up some stuff, but I'm getting off the topic. Yeah, you don't have the same...
Ask ChatGPT.
We'll give the same wrong answers, yes.
Oh yeah, ChatGPT, yeah. No comment on that one. People are not used to read code, okay. Sorry, this one comes under searching for stuff. So I think if I understand this as a newbie, it means that, oh, the answer I'm looking for is actually in the image, right? I just have to go and find how it's implemented, right? And that is true, and it took me a long time to break out of that. So maybe the answer is we have to really just beat this into people, give them tasks where they have to go and actually find stuff in the code and say the answer is in the code. So.
Well, it's not just that actually. So I'm currently teaching my girlfriend how to do JavaScript. It's her first language. And what I'm really trying to drill into her is that code execution happens line by line. That's hard.
Yeah. I have this problem sometimes with students where they don't understand a program counter. I was just trying to explain the concept of a state of a program and saying the program counter, and it seems that this isn't a concept that anyone learns in the prereqs for the computer science stuff. So yeah.
So I also feel like that's also not used to really reading line by line.
Right. Okay. People do not look for examples in existing code. I think that's almost the same thing. Yeah. Under retooling is a challenge. So utter lack of modern version control. Envy does not count. So yeah, I
would really love to have branching and merging.
Yeah. So
I understand that Pharo has some functional Git integration.
Yeah.
I use Git all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, I think the word utter is a little bit strong, at least for Pharo. I mean, I would say there are some. I mean, I could get into the iceberg misconceptions because there are quite a lot. I think because you have, iceberg itself has a whole bunch of gotchas, but once you understand it, well, I still don't understand all of it, but I'm at least comfortable to use it. So, and GitHub started to force us with two-factor authentication, so that's going to make, I think, some people have trouble with iceberg, but yeah.
Because then you have to teach people how to authenticate.
Yeah, because there isn't a, you can't really, you have to use the SSH, I think is that right?
You can do something else, but you have to teach people how to grab a token to authenticate, and then you have to use the token as a password, and
also they actually, okay.
But those are not, those are Git misconceptions. If you want to,
Yeah. Okay.
So, iceberg, to add on that, there's the misconception in my case of you're from a previous background type of thing, because I find iceberg confusing, so I just use Git on the command line and then I say describe image repository and thing, and I just ignore iceberg.
That's how I get around the two-factor authentication. I commit locally with Pharo, and then I go to Visual Studio Code, open the thing, then push it, and then the authentication is solved. So it works.
I just really want advanced Git features that I don't see in iceberg, so I just like this is incomplete for me. But that's also a misconception.
Yeah. Okay, I see we have another one called sorry, yes? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
What is the semantic of this example?
Oh, so this example here was actually in a paper that documented a misconception, and it was the one that I showed in the beginning. And so they have a template which they call the anti-pattern template, and it's a way to represent misconceptions, which I thought today it's difficult to get to this level today, because we're just brainstorming.
For example, if you would like to sum to add the first 10 natural numbers, the counting E plus E should be before you build the sum.
Yeah, it actually is. And what it's like, if you go down, it says the loop counter is incorrectly updated. And that's really that line number, whatever line number that is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's line number 5 is the mistake. It's the one I presented early on. It's the misconception where apparently a lot of students, when they are asked this question to complete that line, they will put I equals 1. Why they do it, I'm not sure. Like,
they want to run infinite loop.
But even if they would choose I equal I plus 1, they would only sum the first 9.
yeah, perhaps that's another misconception. I just wanted to show one concrete case. But you're right. There's probably several that you could make a mistake on. So, yeah.
And this one is tough in students make such mistake in Pharo because then the whole Smalltalk, the whole UI hangs. If you have an infinite loop, and
Yeah.
do it in a playground.
Yeah, control period or something like that, right?
It doesn't work all the time.
Yeah.
Because
How
long
tight
you
it
do
is. Yeah.
So how big is this?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true. Maybe that's an IDE. I didn't think about classifying them as language and IDE because that's another possible way we can classify these. Yes?
Just one short question. Do the students that get that example, do they get a description of what the code is supposed to do?
I don't believe so. I think, yes, they're probably told, I don't actually have enough of the context here in my thing, but I do think that they're given a description of what the code is supposed to do and to complete the code, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because without telling the student what the code is supposed
Exactly,
to do.
yeah. Yeah. That's part of the problem of designing a concept inventory is the questions can be themselves badly formed. And in that case, you could get wrong answers because of the way people understand the question. So this is also a second part of the validation of the research, which again, we're not talking about that today. So this is sort of like the end goal, right? So I see somebody put super is not the superclass. I think it was probably Steph who did this. I'm going to guess. This might be, but again, the idea with a misconception is that you could show a context where a person is going to give, and I know Steph probably has an example program where people are going to put super instead of what the right answer is. And so really that's going to be another way of trying to formulate the question, try to get people to choose that wrong answer and show that they misunderstand. So again, just like the paths of the bowling ball in the beginning. Yeah. Dave.
Two misconceptions here.
Uh-huh.
One is it's not the super of the receiver, it's not the superclass of the receiver, with syntactically like that does there, but it's the superclass of the sender, not the superclass of the receiver. So if you send C, it's not C's superclass, it's B's superclass.
Okay.
So it's actually two different misconceptions.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe this would actually be related to the two. So there is some rationale, but it didn't get all filled out. There's another one for self, and again, I think that's Steph who did it, which is great. We're getting along here. We have some other ones at the end. A trait is not an interface. So I don't know. I think that comes from the multiple inheritance aspect. So people are trying to think of it as.
No, but there's people that use them to declare interfaces. So,
Oh, yes? Okay. So, Guichet, you wrote this one?
No, I didn't.
No?
I see that people do that.
Okay.
They declare all the methods as abstract methods.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we did work this one, and the thing is, often students don't understand the difference between a trait and an interface, and especially the thing is that they don't understand that the interface should declare some behavior that has to be implemented afterward, whereas the traits already has the behavior in itself.
Yeah.
And the behavior can be reused by
Okay.
the classes.
Okay. True is a class and true is an instance. So really the case, it's a case problem, whether you're talking about an instance or the class. I'm sure there's a lot of code with that mistake. That's a great one. Using block as a function. We had this one before, I think, as mentioned. Lazy initialization instead of initialize methods. It's from Olex. This is interesting because also I struggle with how do you initialize things. And again, it gets back to looking at examples. There's not always consistent solution, like depending on what you look at in the image, you can find different ways of doing things. But maybe that's different than what Alex is saying. Difference between string and symbol. Yeah, I agree there's some confusion there. It helps, I guess, if you know the design patterns. Dictionaries are not classes. Well, I think they came from your group. Yeah?
Yes.
Stefan? Okay.
People use sometimes dictionaries as classes.
Okay. Print versus doing, same thing as Steph, I think. That's, yeah, he mentioned that. Dynamic versus static arrays, okay. Libraries versus languages, interesting. We do not have to learn by heart all the API of library classes. Yeah. Okay. It's similar to what my question, the former student that was feeling intimidated by the API. I think that's alias. Okay, that's probably Steph who also put that. The exorcism videos, he mentioned that because there's some comments. We'll have to go and pick those out, the exorcism video. Separator is more flexible than a terminator. Okay, and except two. I'm not sure what that one is. It's the last one. Well, okay, so maybe you can follow up with Steph. He's not here. I suspect that these were all Steph's at the end. So time is almost up. Like we have about 15 minutes, but we don't have to take 15 minutes after this. I feel like it's great to have all this feedback. We have a lot more than I expected to get. And
where's the single quote and double quote?
Oh, yeah, there should be a single quote and a double quote. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's boring.
So you can put it in now. So.
Not there because it's the telephone.
Okay, can someone put the single quote versus double quote?
I will.
Please. Thank you. I think that goes under maybe previous language, whatever. The old habits die hard. I would guess that's a. It depends on what you're expecting, but it's not important whether it's in the right thing. These are just themes. So. Anyway, I don't really have a plan at this point. I thought what we can do is we can maybe compile this stuff into another, with more organization, and then we'll share it again maybe on Discord or what do you prefer to get the feedback? Because I want to keep this open. We can maybe put it on a GitHub actually, something like that. So. The idea is really to give it back to the community and show the steps that we're going on. So I think that's what I would suggest we'll end up with it on a GitHub. Actually, the whole project, even the idea was at the end when we come up with concept inventory questions, if we get that far, that's the idea, is that those questions would also be on maybe a GitHub. I don't know how public we want to make the questions, but one of the problems with putting questions on a GitHub is the students already know the questions before they take the measurement. So, anyway, if there's no other comments, I would just like to thank everyone. I think you deserve a round of applause. So.